The storm hit the floating palace without warning. Lightning cracked across the darkened sky, striking the metal spires and sending showers of sparks down the corridors. In the heart of the maintenance bay, Vance Corbin's gloved hands clutched a frayed power conduit as the floor shuddered beneath him. Water hissed on live circuits. A gust of wind slammed the doors, rattling the entire structure. He had seconds to act. A faint, desperate whine drew his attention. At first he thought it was the storm. Then came a second, sharper cry, tiny, terrified but unmistakably alive. Vance's pulse spiked. He scanned the dim bay. Shadows twisted against the emergency lights. There, beyond the fallen scaffolding and sparking cables, a small, silver shimmer moved. 2 dragon cubs. He froze for a moment, heart pounding. One cub's scales flickered with a strange inner glow. The other huddled near a sparking energy panel, trembling, claws pressed against the jagged metal. Sparks danced around its feet. Every instinct screamed danger. One wrong move and the containment unit could explode. Vance didn't hesitate. Years of navigating broken circuits and failing machinery had trained him to act fast. He sprinted toward the cubs, ducking a swinging cable that crackled like a whip. His fingers moved over the panel controls, rerouting power through a temporary circuit to prevent a complete overload. Sparks shot past him, scorching his arm, but he ignored it. Every second counted. The nearest cub hissed, tiny wings quivering, but it didn't run. Instead, it pressed its claw to a console. Lights pulsed, not random but almost responsive. A thought struck him: these weren't ordinary creatures. Something about their energy felt alive, intelligent. He glanced at the other cub, still trapped near the unstable unit. A surge of electricity arced across the floor, sending a shower of sparks into Vance's face. He ducked instinctively, yanking a console lever with his shoulder. The panel groaned and groaned again as circuits rerouted. The energy spike died down. One small win. The cub nearest him chirped softly, nudging his chest, almost as if it recognized him. Vance swallowed hard, realizing he might be forming a bond with a creature far beyond normal understanding. Then came the crash. A massive energy shockwave blasted through the chamber. Loose cables whipped across the floor, knocking Vance off balance. The cub in his arms dug its claws into his jacket, refusing to let go. He slammed against a wall, slid down to the ground and caught his breath. Dust and sparks filled the air. The second cub was gone. Vance's stomach tightened. The shadows shifted. He strained his eyes through the smoke, searching. A faint glow appeared from under a pile of overturned crates, silver scales flickering like moonlight on water. He crawled forward, ignoring the sting on his scraped hands. Every movement had to be precise. One false step and the containment unit could detonate. As he lifted the crates, a sudden high-pitched alarm echoed through the bay. Security drones had activated, mistaking the cub's energy pulses for rogue anomalies. Their scanning beams cut across the floor, blue light slicing through smoke. Vance froze, then ducked low, dragging the smaller cub with him. He whispered, "Stay close. Don't make a sound." The cub's eyes glowed brighter, almost in response. Sparks flared from its scales when it twitched, causing a tiny pulse that disrupted the drone's sensors. Vance's heart leapt. A momentary advantage. Using quick thinking, he jammed a broken circuit board into the nearest drone sensor array. Sparks flew. The drone shuddered, then powered down with a hiss. A small victory. But the larger cub remained out of reach. Its cries echoed, urgent and pleading. Vance risked another glance. A falling support beam, loosened by the storm, threatened to crush the pile of crates where the cub hid. He could either save the cub or retreat to safety. Seconds stretched into eternity. Vance gritted his teeth, decision made. With one hand holding the first cub tight, he pushed the crates aside with the other, exposing the second. The cub blinked up at him, scales flickering with a strange, almost intelligent light. For a heartbeat, it seemed to understand that this human was no threat. Lightning struck the bay again, illuminating the chamber in blinding white. Sparks shot everywhere. Vance reached for the cub. A surge of energy pulsed from the containment unit, knocking him backward. He caught himself against a wall, chest heaving, eyes fixed on the cub. It was free, but the danger was far from over. A metallic groan echoed from above. A support beam, twisted and stressed, was about to collapse entirely. Dust rained down, and the cub huddled against him instinctively. Vance felt the weight of responsibility settle like armor on his shoulders. One wrong move and not just the cubs but the entire palace could be destroyed. He inhaled deeply, bracing for the next moment. His fingers tightened on the control lever. Sparks danced, thunder boomed, and the cubs looked at him with trust that no machine or weapon had ever earned. Then, from the far corner of the bay, a shadow moved. The second cub's glow pulsed as if reacting to it. Vance's breath caught. Something, or someone, was coming through the smoke. And it wasn't human. Vance's muscles tensed as the shadow moved closer. The second cub's glow flared, sharp and bright, almost as if it were warning him. He squinted through the smoke and sparks, trying to make out the form. The air felt heavier now, charged not just with electricity, but with a silent, watchful presence. Every instinct screamed danger. Before he could react, a mechanical hum filled the chamber. Security drones, alerted by the cub's strange energy pulses, descended from the ceiling on retractable arms. Their sensors swept the floor, scanning for anomalies. The bay was no longer just a storm zone, it had become a deadly trap. Vance's heart raced. He held the first cub tightly against his chest. The smaller one chirped softly, its glow flickering in rhythm with his heartbeat. The second cub, still under the pile of debris, hissed and twitched, illuminating the drone's scanning beams. He had seconds to think. One wrong move and the drones would fire containment charges. He crouched low, scanning the floor for anything useful. Broken conduits, loose panels and discarded circuit boards littered the bay. His mind raced. He was an electrician, not a soldier, but in this moment he had to be both. Using his jacket sleeve, he jammed a makeshift EMP disruptor into one drone's sensor. Sparks flew and the drone wobbled before shutting down. A small victory. Come on, he muttered, dragging the first cub toward the catwalk stairs. The second cub chirped again, frightened. Vance glanced back. The pile of crates teetered dangerously, threatening to bury it, or worse, activate the unstable energy unit beneath. Lightning struck again, illuminating the chamber in blinding white. The metal support beams groaned, vibrating in protest. Vance's pulse quickened. He had to act fast. Ignoring the pain in his burned forearm, he pushed debris aside, exposing the second cub fully. Its silver scales shimmered like molten silver, tiny wings fluttering with urgency. It hesitated, staring at him. "Trust me," he whispered, even as the drones repositioned, sensors sweeping in arcs of deadly blue. The cub twitched, then with a sudden leap, allowed him to scoop it into his free arm. Sparks crackled across the floor as the unstable energy unit vented another surge. Vance ducked instinctively, pressing the cub close. Both were alive. For now. But the bay was far from safe. The storm outside intensified, thunder rattling the walls, shaking loose more debris. The drones regrouped, smarter now, scanning faster. One locked onto the cub's energy signature, aiming its containment charge. Vance didn't have time to think. He sprinted toward a nearby control panel, improvising on instinct. His hands moved with precision, rewiring the emergency power reroutes to create a temporary shield of pulsing energy. Sparks flew everywhere as the drones fired. The blast hit the shield and ricocheted harmlessly. Another small payoff. Vance didn't stop. He needed a plan to get the cubs out of the bay. The only exit was a narrow service corridor, barely wide enough for him to squeeze through with both cubs. He leapt over a fallen scaffold, landing hard on one knee, sweat and grime stinging his eyes. The first cub chirped, nuzzling him as if offering encouragement. He allowed himself a brief smile. Small victories mattered even here. Then the drones adapted. Their sensors began tracking energy pulses directly. One moved toward the second cub with alarming speed. Vance's stomach sank. He grabbed a loose power conduit, swinging it like a baton. Sparks flew as he connected it to the floor grid, creating a burst of electrical interference. The drone faltered, twitching violently before powering down in a shower of sparks. Relief washed over him, but only for a moment. The second cub, sensing the danger, pressed against his shoulder. Its glow pulsed sharply, sending a ripple of energy into Vance's arm. His eyes widened. The cub wasn't just scared, it was communicating, responding to him. And instinctively he understood. He had to use this bond to guide them to safety. He moved quickly, sprinting down the corridor, the first cub clinging to his chest, the second balanced on his shoulder. Each step sent sparks from exposed panels flying, the walls vibrating from the storm. Every second felt like an eternity. They were close, but the bay's main energy conduit, the source of the unstable surge, was failing fast. One wrong move and the chamber would collapse entirely. A loud metallic groan echoed through the corridor. Vance glanced up. Part of the ceiling support, weakened by the storm, was buckling above the exit. His heart thudded in his chest. No time for careful planning. Using every ounce of strength, he sprinted forward, dodging falling debris, relying on the cub's strange energy pulses to guide him. The smaller cub chirped, a tiny flash of light blinding in the dark, showing him the path. Then came a crack, sharp, threatening. The ceiling beam trembled, inches from collapsing entirely. Vance froze for a heartbeat, calculating. He couldn't stop, couldn't slow down, yet he had to shield the cubs. His eyes caught a sturdy maintenance hatch above the corridor. Risking everything, he jumped, grabbing the edge, hoisting himself and the cubs upward just as the beam crashed behind them, sending dust and sparks flying. They landed safely on the hatch ledge. Vance panted, chest heaving. Both cubs huddled against him, glowing faintly in exhaustion. The storm raged outside, drones still searching below. He looked down at the bay, now a chaotic mess of broken circuits, smoldering metal and collapsed scaffolding. One wrong move in the next few minutes and none of them would survive. A faint hum echoed from the far end of the hatch corridor. Vance stiffened. He wasn't alone. Something, or someone, was moving toward them. The glow of the second cub pulsed in response, brighter this time, almost anxious. Vance's stomach tightened. Whatever approached wasn't human. He hugged the cubs closer, whispering, "Stay close. We're not done yet." The shadow emerged. Tall, silent, and moving with deliberate purpose. Vance's eyes widened. Sparks from the storm illuminated a glint of armor, or something beyond human design. The cubs stirred, wings flickering, ready to react. The first step of contact was about to be made, and Vance knew the choices in the next few seconds would decide all their fates. Vance froze, holding both cubs close as the shadow stepped into the dim light. It was tall and angular, not quite human, but moving with precise, deliberate grace. Armor plates shimmered faintly with an energy of their own. Vance's heart pounded. The storm outside had quieted slightly, leaving an eerie silence except for the hum of the palace circuits and the faint chirps of the cubs. The second cub flared its glow suddenly, sending a pulse of energy that lit the corridor like a miniature lightning strike. The figure paused, scanning the light. Then it shifted, not aggressively but cautiously. Vance realized the cub was communicating somehow, warning him, signaling the presence of something powerful yet intelligent. His mind raced. What were these dragons capable of? And why did they trust him in a way no machine or soldier ever had? The armored figure spoke, voice metallic but deliberate, a calm monotone over the storm's echo. Human intervention detected. You have removed anomalies from the containment zone. Explain your purpose. Vance blinked. He was never trained for negotiation with sentient machines, or aliens if that's what this was. Yet he spoke clearly, hands still protecting the cubs. I saved them. They weren't a threat, they were trapped. I couldn't leave them there. They're alive and they need help. The figure's head tilted slightly. Vance noticed faint blue lights flickering under its visor, scanning the cubs. Unexpected bond detected, unusual for a human. Why are they responding to you? Vance glanced at the second cub. Its glow pulsed in time with his heartbeat. For the first time he felt a strange clarity. He understood it wasn't just instinct, it recognized his courage and calm. I don't know, he admitted. I only know I had to save them. The figure stepped closer. The corridor hummed with energy. Containment unit instability will trigger catastrophic failure unless addressed immediately. Human intervention required. Your actions have created an opportunity, but also a risk. Vance's chest tightened. The containment unit, the very chamber he had escaped, was unstable. Sparks still lingered, and the palace's energy systems were fragile. He had seconds to decide. Risk everything to stabilize the dragon's energy or retreat and leave them exposed. There was no easy choice. He inhaled sharply. Then let me help, he said. I know the circuits. I can stabilize the surge, if you let me use the cub's energy with my guidance. The figure paused. Its sensors scanned him rapidly, analyzing his body, his resolve, his every motion. Human decision, accepted. Time is critical. Vance didn't wait. He set the cubs down carefully on a small control panel recessed into the wall. They chirped softly, wings flickering. He touched their scales lightly, feeling the warmth and subtle vibration of energy. It was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Alive, responsive, almost conscious. Sparks of light danced along his hands, merging with the palace circuits. The armored figure monitored silently as Vance traced power conduits with deft fingers. He rerouted energy from damaged circuits, diverting it through the cubs' bodies in controlled pulses. The dragons chirped in response, their glowing scales syncing with the surges, forming a living circuit that stabilized the nearby containment unit. A sudden jolt of energy rocked the corridor. Vance staggered, nearly dropping the cups. He gritted his teeth and recalibrated, using their pulses to offset the surge. Slowly, the humming of failing circuits diminished. Sparks faded. The containment unit stabilized, barely. Vance exhaled, relief washing over him. The armored figure's sensors focused on him fully. Human initiative has prevented disaster. Data indicates efficiency and creativity beyond predictive models. Curiosity: why risk your life for non-human life forms? Vance looked down at the cups. One nuzzled his palm, warmth radiating. Because it's the right thing to do. Because someone had to act. They're alive and they deserved a chance. His voice was firm, unwavering. I couldn't stand by. For a moment the figure seemed still, silent. Then it made a soft mechanical sound, almost like a sigh. Human, exhibits traits of courage, ingenuity, and morality. Observation: these qualities surpass programmed logic. Intriguing. You may continue. The cubs chirped, almost celebrating. Vance allowed himself a brief smile. A small victory, yes, but the tension remained. The palace circuits were fragile, and the storm had left unseen damage elsewhere. Lightning flashed outside, briefly illuminating the far end of the corridor. Vance noticed a faint shimmer, another energy signature, larger, older, and far more powerful than the cubs. His pulse quickened. He had stabilized this chamber, yes, but what had been awakened outside the palace walls? The armored figure stepped aside, gesturing toward the corridor exit. Time-sensitive task: evacuate the anomalies and secure energy nodes. Your initiative will be monitored. Delay may result in loss. Vance gathered the cubs, holding them securely. Each emitted a soft glow in response to his heartbeat, a silent acknowledgement of trust. He realized then that the dragons weren't just creatures. They were conduits, sentient and capable of extraordinary energy control. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. As he moved toward the exit, the cub's glow pulsed in warning. From the far shadows, a low, resonant rumble echoed through the palace. Deeper, more powerful than any storm or machine. The armored figure's sensors flickered in recognition, scanning outward. Vance froze. The cubs pressed against him instinctively. Whatever waited beyond the shadows wasn't merely observing. It was alive, ancient, and aware of their presence. He tightened his grip. We're not done yet, he whispered. Hold on. The rumble grew louder, a vibration through the floor, the walls, and even the air itself. The cub's glow flared bright, almost blinding. Vance's heart raced. He knew this was only the beginning. A larger force had been awakened, and the palace, and possibly the entire empire, hung in the balance. Vance's lungs burned, his muscles screaming, but he didn't stop. The corridor twisted before him like a maze, sparks and twisted metal strewn everywhere from the storm and the earlier energy surges. The cubs pressed tightly against his chest and shoulder, wings flickering nervously, their glow pulsing like warning lights. Something massive stirred beyond the far doors, a force that seemed to hum with intelligence and power. Every instinct screamed danger, yet Vance's mind was clear. He had to act. Ahead, the palace's main energy conduit hummed dangerously, feeding into an array of failing stabilizers. Without intervention, the core would overload, tearing the palace apart. But it wasn't just the mechanics. Whatever force waited outside seemed to be drawing energy toward itself. Vance's pulse quickened. The cub's scales glimmered brighter, almost reacting to the foreign presence, their tiny wings twitching as if sensing a larger plan. Vance set the first cub gently on a nearby console, then held the second up to his chest. Sparks from a nearby panel shot across the floor. He realized there was only one way. He had to synchronize his movements with the cub's energy pulses, channeling their unique power to stabilize the conduit. Every second counted. One mistake in the palace, and the dragons could be destroyed. He pressed the palm of his hand to the smaller cub's chest, feeling warmth and energy radiating through his glove. The creature chirped softly, its glow intensifying. The larger cub perched near the conduit, wings fluttering nervously, but its pulses synced with Vance's heartbeat. For the first time he understood the bond wasn't just instinct, it was trust, recognition, and communication. These creatures were partners, not just animals. The armored figure from before observed silently, sensors flickering rapidly. Drones hovered nearby, their scanning beams cutting through the chaos, but none interfered. They seemed curious. Vance ignored them. He had no time for distractions. Lightning struck the outer spire again, shaking the walls and sending shards of metal clattering to the floor. The conduit sparked violently, and a warning alarm shrieked in the distance. Vance adjusted the pulse frequency through the console, feeling the energy of the cubs flowing through his arms. Sparks danced across his gloves, illuminating his grim, determined face. He grit his teeth. Pain shot up his arms, but he didn't falter. Courage wasn't absence of fear, it was action despite it. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shuddered. A massive shadow stretched across the corridor as the energy beyond the doors surged toward them. The cubs hissed and flared, wings beating rapidly. Vance braced himself, feeling the pull of raw power against his body. He could fall, be thrown, be crushed, but he would not abandon them. He whispered, "We've got this. Trust me." The larger cub leapt, pressing against his chest and then directly into the conduit. Its energy intertwined with the failing systems, forming a bridge between raw power and control. Sparks erupted, arcing across the floor. Vance gritted his teeth and plunged both hands into the flowing currents, channeling the dragon's power. Pain shot through him, almost unbearable, but he ignored it, focusing on the rhythm of their energy, letting the pulses guide his actions. A deafening alarm echoed through the palace as the foreign energy pulsed violently, attempting to draw the dragon's power toward itself. The cubs shrieked, wings flaring, but Vance's calm presence steadied them. Every instinct, every learned skill, every ounce of human ingenuity came into play. He recalibrated the conduit, shifting energy, bridging circuits, and improvising as the currents threatened to explode in his hands. Then, with a massive flash, the energy surged outward. The cub's glow intensified, brighter than the emergency lights, radiating through the corridor. Vance felt the surge push against him like a tidal wave. He tightened his grip, channeling the energy precisely, forcing it into the conduit. Sparks flew in showers, metal bent and groaned, and for a tense heartbeat, nothing moved but the glowing bond between human and dragons. A sudden metallic shriek tore through the air. The armored figure's sensors flared wildly. Vance looked up just in time to see a massive support beam above him cracking, ready to collapse. He didn't think, he acted. Launching himself forward, he grabbed the beam, leveraging his weight against the structure. Sparks and debris rained down around him, but the cubs stayed close, glowing fiercely. With a final grunt, he pushed the beam into a secure angle, preventing disaster just long enough for the conduit to stabilize. The energy hummed, then began to settle. The palace's systems synchronized with the cubs' pulses, the hum calming, the lights returning to normal. Vance collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, sweat and blood streaking his face. Both cubs nestled against him, exhausted but alive, their glow softening into a calm shimmer. The armored figure stepped forward. Its sensors flickered in awe, or something akin to it. Human intervention successful. Data indicates efficiency, courage, and ingenuity far surpassing programmed models. Observation: you have prevented total failure. Vance looked at the cubs, warmth swelling in his chest. Small victories mattered. Courage mattered. Humanity mattered. He whispered, "We did it, together." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the shadowy far corridor once more. Vance noticed it again. A faint, larger energy pulse, older and stronger than the cubs, lingering just beyond the palace walls. His stomach tightened. The palace was saved, yes, but this force had been awakened. Something ancient, intelligent, and far more powerful than anything he had faced. The cubs stirred instinctively, sensing it too. Their pulses flared in warning. Vance hugged them closer. "We're not done yet," he said, voice steady despite the exhaustion. "Something's coming and we'll face it together." The armored figure nodded once, silently acknowledging his courage. Observation: human qualities of empathy, bravery, and ingenuity are remarkable. Awaiting further developments. Vance glanced toward the far corridor where the energy pulsed. He knew their next challenge would be even greater. But he also knew one thing with certainty: humans were capable of extraordinary feats, and he would not falter. The cubs chirped softly, wings trembling but ready. Sparks still floated in the air, dancing with their glow. Vance took a deep breath, chest tight with anticipation. Beyond the doors, the ancient force waited, and the palace, and the dragons, depended on him. The storm had passed, leaving the palace in an eerie calm. Smoke curled from broken circuits, and sparking panels flickered faintly in the dim emergency lights. Vance Corbin knelt on the maintenance hatch, both dragon cubs curled against him, their soft glows pulsing in quiet relief. He could feel their warmth through his gloves, a small comfort after the chaos. Every muscle in his body ached, every breath burned, yet he felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. He had faced impossible odds, and won. A heavy step echoed behind him. The armored figure from before moved into the light, sensors scanning every inch of the bay. Human initiative prevented disaster, it said, voice calm and deliberate. Observation, courage, ingenuity, and empathy exceed predictive models. Conclusion, you are exceptional. Vance wiped sweat from his brow, still holding the cubs close. We only did what we had to, he said softly, though inside he knew it had been more than duty. The cubs chirped in response as if agreeing. Their glowing scales seemed to shimmer brighter now, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond that had formed in the crucible of danger. A door hissed open at the far end of the corridor. Vance tensed, expecting another threat. Instead, the Emperor appeared, tall and imposing, robes flowing despite the chaos, eyes sharp and assessing. The glow of the cubs reflected off his golden armor, illuminating his calm, unreadable expression. You, the Emperor said, voice low but firm, have done what no soldier, no machine could. You saved the anomalies. You preserved the palace. He stepped closer, and Vance could feel the weight of his presence. Why risk your life for creatures that could be considered expendable? Vance glanced down at the cubs. One pressed its tiny head against his chest, the other flapped a delicate wing against his arm. Because they were alive, he said simply. Because someone had to act. And because it was the right thing to do. His voice was steady. There was no hesitation, no fear. Only certainty. The Emperor's eyes softened slightly, a flicker of respect in their depths. He knelt, lowering himself to the cub's level. Observation, these beings, they respond to you in a way that is unusual. Rare. Remarkable. He reached out a hand, hovering near the cubs without touching. Perhaps, humans are more than what I have measured. Perhaps courage and empathy are stronger than logic and control. Vance's chest tightened. He had never expected praise from royalty, or an acknowledgement that humans could surpass machines or even centuries of tradition. He looked at the cubs and for the first time, allowed himself a small smile. I guess, we're full of surprises, he said. The Emperor rose, eyes sweeping over the damage and the glowing dragons. These anomalies will remain under your protection, he declared. You, human, will be guardian of their energy. Should they be threatened again, the responsibility, and the authority, will rest with you. Vance blinked, stunned. Guardian. Not soldier, not employee. Guardian. He nodded slowly, realizing the weight of the trust and responsibility placed on him. The cubs chirped as if acknowledging the new title themselves, wings fluttering softly. A quiet rumble shook the palace floor. Vance froze, then realized the energy signature from outside, the one they had sensed earlier, was still active. The cubs' glows flared, reacting instinctively. Whatever ancient force had been awakened was still out there, aware, waiting. The Emperor's gaze followed Vance's. You have only begun, he said quietly. Something beyond this palace stirs. Its power is old, intelligent, and far-reaching. You have proven humans are capable, but the coming trials will require more than courage alone. Vance tightened his grip on the cubs. He could feel their energy thrumming through him, a living bond he hadn't fully understood until now. Then we'll face it together, he said firmly. I won't let anything hurt them or the palace. The Emperor inclined his head, acknowledging both his courage and his bond with the dragons. Then he turned, walking toward the central chamber, leaving Vance and the cubs to catch their breath in the quiet aftermath. Vance let the moment sink in, the tension, the fear, the adrenaline, the relief. All of it had led here to this fragile peace. He looked down at the cubs again. One nestled its tiny head against his chest, the other flapped a tiny wing against his arm. You're safe, for now, he whispered. But even as he spoke, he could feel the lingering pulse of the outside energy. It was a warning, a signal of what lay ahead. Vance's mind raced with possibilities. Who or what was out there? How far-reaching was its power? Could he and the cubs survive what was coming next? He didn't have answers, but he did have determination, courage, and the trust of these extraordinary creatures. And that, he realized, was enough to face the unknown. The cubs chirped again, almost in unison, their glows pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Together, they stepped toward the observation deck, where the palace lights reflected off the storm-cleared horizon. Far beyond the palace walls, a faint shimmer danced in the night sky, a massive energy pulse, older and stronger than anything they had yet encountered. Vance felt a surge of resolve. Whatever waited out there, humans would meet it with courage, intelligence, and heart. And he would lead the way. The cubs nestled closer, wings brushing against his arms, their warmth a reminder that bravery and empathy could shine even against the most impossible odds. The palace may have been saved for now, but the adventure was only beginning. Vance looked toward the horizon, feeling the first sparks of purpose ignite within him. "Let's see what comes next," he whispered.